Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I know we have people still trickling in, but I'm just going to get started with my spiel before handing it over. So first and foremost, welcome to another session of Trauma Informed Tuesdays. We are delighted to have you all here with us today, and thank you so much for being with us. Today, we actually have a featured guest speaker with us, Letitia Peyton. She is the Executive Director of Tent Makers of Louisiana. Letitia and her husband, Scott Peyton, founded their nonprofit after their son came forward as a victim of clergy sex abuse. She has been working as an advocate for victims of clergy sex abuse in Louisiana and across the country. Letitia was appointed by the legislature to a task force for victims of domestic abuse and sex trafficking. The organization is dedicated to fostering hope, healing, and justice for survivors of clergy sex abuse. Thank you so much for Letitia. Thank you so much, Letitia, for being here with us today and telling your story and enlightening us all on the work that you do. Today, our session is being recorded. You can find all past recordings as well as this session on Lavo's website, lavo.info, under the menu tab for service providers. It is password protected, and you can use the code EMPOWER with a capital E to log in. At the end of today's training, you'll be automatically directed to a feedback survey. We would greatly appreciate your comments so we can continue to make changes to this series to provide an optimal experience for all of you. So please leave suggestions for future training topics, possible Trauma-Informed Tuesday presenters, and anything else you want to see. There are also 2 questions at the end of the survey that you can fill out your information to receive a certificate of participation. Certificates will be emailed to you within 24 to 48 hours of completion of the webinar. Finally, if you or your organization would like to be a featured speaker like Letitia is today, please feel free to reach out with any questions feel free to reach out to me with any questions you may have about how to do so. Myra will be back with us next month, so be on the lookout for September's training topic. And with that, thank you again so much, Letitia, for being here today, as well as all of our viewers, and take it away.
Thank you, Jolie. Good afternoon, everyone. I am truly honored to be here today presenting on a topic that often goes unspoken, but requires our attention. To protected predators, the substantial reach of Catholic clergy sexual abuse and the victims left behind. This abuse is rarely talked about in public, yet it affects numerous survivors in Louisiana who continue to endure the lasting trauma caused by clergy sex abuse. My name is Letitia Peyton, and I have witnessed the unimaginable devastation brought about by clergy sex abuse within the Catholic Church. As the wife of Scott Peyton, an ordained deacon in the Diocese of Lafayette, Louisiana, I am also a mother of 6 wonderful children, and I have experienced firsthand the profound impact that clergy sex abuse can have on a family. Tragically, one of my sons became a victim of this heinous act. When we learned in 2018 of the abuse of our son that he suffered at the hands of our priest, we were unaware of the full extent of the cover-up, the staggering number of victims, and the dark history of clergy sex abuse within the Catholic Church. This lack of knowledge made it incredibly challenging to find counseling and seek justice, exacerbating the trauma for our son and for our family. I also want to add that at the time of the abuse, and when we first learned what our priest had done to our son, my husband worked with Louisiana Probation and Parole as a probation and parole officer. Today, he works for an organization that advocates for criminal justice reform. So our knowledge of the workings of the Catholic Church and the criminal justice system gives us an advantage when working with survivors or talking about the issues surrounding the systemic problem of sex abuse in the Catholic Church. Motivated by our personal experience, my husband and I founded Tent Makers of Louisiana, a nonprofit organization dedicated to addressing the issue of clergy sex abuse within our state. Through our organization, Tent Makers of Louisiana, we strive to give a voice to the victims, support their healing, and pursue justice for the countless individuals who have suffered. Our journey has uncovered the harsh reality of abuse and its far-reaching consequences for victims and their loved ones. It has also revealed the painful truth that many communities, out of fear or shame, ignore the suffering endured by those harmed. And I get it, clergy sex abuse is a complex topic to discuss. But as Louisiana's citizens, we cannot remain silent and allow the darkness to persist unchallenged. We must comprehensively understand the issue's scope and shed light on its prevailing lack of awareness. Before we delve into this presentation, let us clearly understand the matter. Clergy sex abuse refers to the devastating sexual abuse crimes committed by clergy members within the Catholic Church and religious institutions. These abuses have inflicted immeasurable pain and harm upon the victims, their families, and the broader community. We must acknowledge the gravity of this problem to grasp the urgency with which we must confront it. Thank you for joining me today as we explore the issue of clergy sex abuse, its impact, and the steps we can take to empower survivors, bring this abuse to the forefront of conversations, and make lasting changes to protect children and vulnerable adults. Louisiana is known for its heavily influenced Catholic culture, even before it became part of the United States. Our flag has a pelican on it, as do many Catholic altars. The fleur-de-lis is also a symbol of the Virgin Mary. Public schools, like Catherine Drexel Elementary in Broussard, Louisiana, still bear the name of Catholic saints. The Saints football team was named to reflect the saints of the Catholic Church. Many of our parishes are named after Catholic saints, as well as our towns and communities. Undoubtedly, many influential Catholic families formed many of our cities, communities, and government. Well-known families sent their sons off to become priests, a position of honor for the family and the ordained young man. Sadly, it seems many have become predators of boys, girls, men, and women throughout the years. Many families and communities do not want the shame of clergy sex brought upon them. So they tolerate the abuse or they look the other way, which protects the predators. In every instance of looking the other way, a person is harmed traumatically and rarely gets justice. I aim to shed light on this darkness across Louisiana. What information do we have about clergy sex abuse in Louisiana? The information we have has been provided to us by the bishops of Louisiana. Does anyone actually believe that we can trust the ones covering up the crimes to tell us the full extent of the criminal behavior? The issue of clergy sex abuse is an institutional problem, expanding worldwide, and Louisiana has not been immune from this crisis. The Louisiana bishops report that there have been 212 accused priests and religious in the state. Given the alarming averages provided by research, where abusers who molested girls had approximately 52 victims on average, and those targeting boys had an average of 150 victims, we can estimate the potential number of victims in Louisiana. In this context, the average number of victims in Louisiana could range from approximately 10,424 victims to a staggering 31,800 victims. It is important to note that these figures are based on averages and assumptions that the number of accused priests or religious, as reported by the bishops in Louisiana, is accurate. Still, they highlight the potential magnitude of the impact. Moreover, considering that only 38% of child victims disclose that they have been sexually abused, we must recognize that these estimated numbers of Louisiana victims are likely significantly lower than the actual number of victims in Louisiana. Knowing only 38% report their abuse, this suggests that there may be hundreds, if not thousands, of unreported cases in Louisiana alone, potentially affecting many citizens in the state. Considering the numbers in other states, if there were an investigation into the Catholic Church in Louisiana, like in other states, we would expect the number of those who have suffered abuse to go much higher. These statistics underscore the urgent need for comprehensive action, support, and accountability measures in Louisiana and across the church to address the impact of clergy sex abuse on individuals, families, and communities. Going back to the number of accused in Louisiana that the bishops have given us, of the 212 credibly accused priests or religious in Louisiana, only 2 had gone to jail before July of 2023. In July of 2023, a third priest was sentenced to 5 years in prison for sexually molesting 2 boys. That is a staggeringly low or small number of convicted priests who have faced justice, considering the number of credibly accused priests or religious is 212. And this number has been updated within the last few days. So I don't have the actual number that they updated, but 212 was a good number was their number. We know that some bishops allow these men to return to society, having never faced criminal charges and without warning to the public. Monsignor Roby Robichaud of the Diocese of Lafayette is one such priest. He was removed from his priestly duties, but not charged with a crime. So we assume he lives freely in society while his victim or victims were left to fight for justice. During this presentation, I'll make some references to a report titled "Taking Responsibility: Jesuit Educational Institutions Confront the Causes and Legacy of Clergy Sex Abuse." If interested, a QR code on the slide will lead you to the report for later viewing. This report is an initiative of Fordham University and aims to fund research at Fordham and other Jesuit institutions. The research provides valuable insights that can help identify methods such as cultural and policy changes for Jesuit educational institutions to address the harms caused by sexual abuse and its cover-up. It's a step towards becoming leaders in safeguarding children and vulnerable adults in the future. Moreover, many of the findings in this report can be relevant and applicable to the entire church. My family's experiences influence my opinion, further emphasizing its significance. The Taking Responsibility report highlights a significant issue within the Catholic community: the lack of awareness that even seemingly virtuous priests can commit heinous crimes. The report features the case of Father Kinney. He was affectionately known as the monkey priest because he carried around a monkey puppet. He was regarded as a charismatic theology teacher and a compassionate freshman football coach at Peyton Preparatory High School. Notably, he showed particular care and attention to students who didn't fit the stereotypical mold of a Creighton Prep student, reaching out to those who had experienced significant traumas or disruptive events in their lives. Under the guise of providing spiritual healing, Father Kinney engaged in a disturbing pattern of exploiting vulnerable students, probing them for intimate information. Eventually, his behavior led to his dismissal after a credible allegation of abuse surfaced. However, the research went beyond just investigating the methods of his abuse. It uncovered a more troubling reality. The researchers discovered evidence that suggested Father Kinney might not have been a singular rogue priest. Instead, there were indications that others may have been aware of his actions and even might have helped him facilitate them. 5 key findings about Father Kinney's case have broader implications for Jesuit educational institutions and dioceses across Louisiana. First, his abuse was not an isolated event or incident. It confirmed the systemic nature of clergy sex abuse within Catholic organizations, dispelling the notion that it's limited to a specific subset of priests. The research expanded to reveal patterns of involvement from individuals and authorities in the Omaha, Nebraska area and beyond who excused, concealed, and rehabilitated Father Kenny's image. Furthermore, the report shed light on the closed system of the church, making it incredibly difficult to track cases of abuse that were not actionable in court. Father Kenny and others like him operated with significant stealth, often using the confessional to create a false sense of security for their victims and establish plausible deniability for themselves. The school and church administrators might use the cover of victim privacy or personnel matters to shield vital information from public scrutiny. Consequently, incidents of odd or inappropriate behavior or even established systems to address the clergy sex abuse may not have been activated in response to credible allegations, but without clear evidence of accountability. The report highlighted how survivors bear the burden of forcing accountability, but doing so can come with significant risks to the survivors, including marginalization from power, opportunities, and belonging in the Omaha community. In light of these findings, the report calls for systemic changes across Jesuit educational institutions and dioceses. It advocates for genuine accountability, support, and protection for survivors, encouraging a climate where victims can come forward without fear of retaliation or exclusion. By addressing these critical issues, the church can move toward healing and ensuring the safety and well-being of its members, particularly the vulnerable children and adults it serves. Complicity and moral injury are crucial when discussing the trauma of clergy sexual abuse. Complicity means being involved in or connected to wrongdoing, either actively or passively. It includes supporting or hiding abusive behavior, which makes the abuse continue and deeply hurt the victims. Moral injury is the emotional harm caused by people witnessing or participating in actions against their strong moral beliefs and values. In the case of clergy sexual abuse, moral injury can affect survivors, witnesses, and others like community members or clergy members. When the institution or individual betrays trust and fails to uphold moral standards, it creates inner conflict, guilt, shame, and a feeling of being let down. In 2018, Pope Francis wrote a letter to the people of God, recognizing the deep wounds caused by clergy sex abuse. He emphasized the importance of preventing future abuse and ending cover-ups. Sadly, not much has changed since his letter. Father Hans Zollner, a German Jesuit priest appointed to the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors by Pope Francis, recently resigned. He strongly criticized the commission for not taking enough responsibility, being compliant, accountable, or transparent. Father Zollner's blistering response reveals the lack of progress in how the church handles and tackles the reforms and addresses clergy sex abuse. We must act urgently to ensure those responsible are held accountable, survivors are protected, and trust in the church is restored. Father Zollner's resignation highlights the complexities surrounding complicity and moral injury. Being part of the Pontifical Commission, he should have been aware of the church's failings in addressing abuse, which would have contributed to a sense of moral injury to him due to his inability to bring about meaningful change. Witnessing the shortcomings and systemic problems within the institution entrusted to protect the vulnerable can lead to feelings of guilt and powerlessness. Additionally, his resignation strongly signals the urgency of taking genuine and effective steps toward accountability, reform, and transparency to address clergy sexual abuse comprehensively. Justice is crucial in protecting others from abuse, but often the church treats such acts as moral failings, not recognizing the criminal aspect and the need for accountability. I recently wrote a blog on the website for Tent Makers of Louisiana, talking about the complex issue of moral failings versus criminal behavior in sex abuse cases. This abuse deeply hurts survivors and their loved ones, goes against ethical standards, and takes away their rights and safety. We must understand that this is both a moral and a criminal problem, and we must take action to help survivors heal and get justice. Demanding accountability for those who commit crimes within the church is essential. We can't just acknowledge their moral failures without seeking legal consequences. Otherwise, we continue to harm survivors and deny them justice. We must hold individuals accountable for their criminal actions to protect survivors and stop future abuses. Reports from investigations have shown widespread abuse and cover-ups by church leaders, which makes it clear that we need comprehensive action and more transparency. When justice is lacking in the church, victims suffer even more. They don't get the validation, closure, or healing they need. We must break the silence and ensure survivors get the justice they deserve. In the wake of Father Zollner's powerful denunciation of the Commission's failures, we must rise up and take action. We must hold the bishops and the hierarchy of the church accountable and heal the moral injury caused by clergy sex abuse. Let's demand transparency and accountability from church leaders, pushing them to take decisive action against abusive clergy and those who enable them. This means holding perpetrators accountable, providing support and resources for survivors, and advocating for legal ways to get justice. We must put survivors' needs first and demand accountability to restore justice and rebuild trust within the church. This won't be easy, but it's essential to heal the wounds of the past and create a future free from such abuse where survivors can find peace and justice. The Fordham Project report emerged from the Pennsylvania Grand Jury report on Catholic clergy sex abuse. The report, authored by Dr. Lisa Cataldo, is titled "Bearing Witness When They Are Us: Toward a Trauma-Informed Perspective on Complicity, Moral Injury, and Moral Witnessing." It sheds light on the aftermath of abuse suffered by victims within the Catholic Church and challenges faced in achieving genuine healing. Dr. Cataldo emphasizes the importance of providing a safe environment for survivors to share their experiences and be heard by trustworthy witnesses who can show empathy and recognize their pain. However, she highlights that trauma is further exacerbated when victims' stories are met with rejection, silence, or denial by individuals or communities. As someone who personally witnessed the healing journey of my own family, I have to acknowledge the negative impact of facing rejection and denial from a community. The key findings of Dr. Cataldo's report revolve around the fact that solutions to trauma-related problems must directly address the traumatic aspects of the abuse. She argues that clergy sex abuse is not just a matter involving the perpetrator and the victim. Still, it also affects those who have trusted and identified with the institution that betrayed their moral standards. This betrayal of trust creates a moral injury, leading to a sense of shame and conflict within individuals who depend on the institution's perceived goodness. This internal conflict can lead to deflection, projection, silence, and denial from the institutional church and various implicated parties connected to clergy sex abuse. The report draws inspiration from the concept of betrayal and the role of the moral witness as described by philosopher Avis Hy Margulies. A moral witness is someone with a personal stake in receiving and sharing the survivor's truth, even if they work within Catholic institutions and face potential risks. These moral witnesses play a crucial role in facilitating meaningful change and remembering the traumatic events, preventing society from glossing over the clergy sex abuse crisis as merely a thing of the past. A trauma-informed approach centered on victim-survivor experiences forms the project's foundation. This approach involves truth-telling, compassionate and authentic witnessing, and empowering survivors. It encourages the creation of opportunities for communal memory and moral witnessing, acknowledging moral injury, disillusionment, narcissistic wounding, and loss. The report proposes institutional actions such as establishing an Office of Moral Witnessing or an institution of ethical memory to take responsibility and create a space for healing. One potential solution to combat clergy sex abuse within the institution when the institution fails is establishing independent support organizations formed by victim survivors or those affected by such abuse. These organizations can provide additional resources, support, and advocacy to address the issue from outside the institutional framework. Here's how such organizations can be of significant help. By creating safe spaces for healing, independent support organizations can create safe spaces where survivors can share their experiences, seek emotional support, and find understanding without fear of rejection or denial. These spaces can be crucial for survivors to process their trauma and find solidarity with others who have undergone similar experiences. These organizations can advocate for the rights and needs of survivors, ensuring that their voices are heard and their concerns are addressed. They can empower survivors to speak up, take action, and demand accountability from the institution and responsible authorities. By raising awareness about clergy sex abuse and its impact, these organizations can work to destigmatize the issue and encourage more individuals to come forward with their stories. Increased awareness can also help educate the public and encourage communities to take action against abuse. Independent support organizations can guide and assist survivors who want to report their abuse to the authorities or the institution. This support can include legal advice, counseling, and protection against potential retaliation. These organizations can collect and analyze data related to clergy sex abuse cases, which can be used to highlight the extent of the problem and advocate for systemic changes within the institution. Independent support organizations can collaborate with law enforcement, mental health professionals, and other relevant agencies to ensure survivors receive comprehensive support and access to necessary services. These organizations can offer financial assistance for survivors who may have faced economic hardships due to the abuse. Additionally, they can help survivors access rehabilitation and therapy services to aid in their recovery. External organizations can pressure the institution to be transparent about clergy sex abuse cases and hold those responsible for their actions. This can include advocating for policies, procedures, and leadership changes within the institution. By forming independent support organizations, victim survivors and those affected by clergy sex abuse can create a united front that empowers them to seek justice and healing, even when the institution fails to address the problem adequately. These organizations can play a crucial role in complementing efforts within the institution and creating a broader societal response to combat and prevent clergy sex abuse. Would it be better for the church to facilitate its training for clergy and staff on trauma-informed care and appropriate responses to disclosures of abuse, or independent organizations? Both approaches have their merits, and ideally, a combination of both would be most effective in addressing clergy sex abuse comprehensively. Let's explore the advantages and considerations for each option. First, the advantages of the church providing training to clergy and staff. The church influences and controls its clergy and staff, making implementing and enforcing training programs easier. Training can be integrated into existing programs, ensuring a more seamless approach. Cultural sensitivity training provided by the church can be tailored to the specific context and culture of the institution, ensuring that it aligns with their values and practices. By taking the initiative to train its members in trauma-informed care and the appropriate responses to disclosure of abuse, the church shows institutional accountability by committing to address the issue and taking responsibility for preventing future abuse. By providing training within the church institution, clergy and staff can gain the necessary knowledge and skills to identify possible signs of abuse and respond effectively. Embracing prevention within the institutional mindset in the church would fill an essential gap in the current approach, which often lacks a serious response both in society's perception and the support of victims. Some considerations of this approach would be the perceived potential bias of training provided solely by the church. It is essential to maintain impartiality and objectivity to avoid appearing biased. Some may question the credibility of the training and whether it adequately addresses the extent of the problem. From an insular perspective, internal training may not benefit from the expertise and broader perspectives that external organizations can provide. There would also be a possible conflict of interest since the church has been involved in covering up abuse cases in the past. Survivors and the public may question the sincerity and effectiveness of the training. This brings us to the advantages of independent organizations providing support and training. One thought would be the impartiality of independent organizations. Independent organizations are seen as impartial and objective entities, which can enhance trust among survivors and the public. Independent organizations often have specialized expertise and extensive experience in dealing with trauma. They can provide comprehensive evidence-based training on trauma-informed care and appropriate responses to disclosures of abuse. External organizations have greater transparency and can advocate for transparency and accountability within the institution, holding it to higher standards of addressing abuse. Independent organizations can reach out to survivors beyond the institution of the church and into community organizations, ensuring support and resources are available to those who may not feel comfortable seeking help within the church. The community outreach would provide much needed alternatives for survivors. Considerations of this approach would be limited control by the church over the training and resources provided by independent organizations, potentially leading to implementation challenges. Another factor in this approach may be the institution's resistance to involving external organizations in addressing an internal issue. Cost and resources would also have to be considered with independent organizations. Engaging external organizations may require financial and logistical resources that the church needs to allocate and may not want to spend. In addition to the training mentioned, the church's approach must emphasize prevention strategies and learn from how other institutions respond to this issue. Prevention-focused training would equip clergy and staff with tools to identify potential risk factors and early warning signs, enabling them to take proactive measures to prevent abuse from occurring. Furthermore, studying and adopting best practices from other institutions that effectively tackle sexual abuse can provide valuable insights and lessons to the Catholic Church's approach. In summary, while the church providing training to clergy and staff is essential, it is equally important to involve independent organizations to complement and strengthen efforts. By collaborating with external organizations, The church can benefit from their specialized expertise, enhance transparency and accountability, and ensure a more impartial approach. Combining both approaches and a strong emphasis on prevention and learning from others can create a more robust and holistic strategy for combating clergy sex abuse, fostering a safer environment, and supporting survivors effectively. Addressing the issue of abuse extends beyond the boundaries of the Catholic community and affects society as a whole. The impact of abuse is not confined to the walls of the Catholic Church. It reaches far beyond, permeating all levels of society. This is not solely a Catholic Church problem. It's a community problem that requires collective acknowledgement and action. Survivors of abuse live within communities, including those not affiliated with the Catholic Church. Their trauma is not limited to their religious identity. It impacts them as individuals and members of a broader community. Abuse, particularly criminal behavior, violates the laws that protect all citizens, regardless of their religious affiliations. By recognizing the broader implications of abuse, we understand that the responsibility to address this issue lies within the Catholic Church and society at large. It demands collaboration and a united effort to protect the vulnerable, seek justice for survivors, and prevent future occurrences in all communities. We must strive for accountability and justice to provide healing and closure to survivors and safeguarding the well-being of every individual, regardless of their religious beliefs. Addressing this issue conveys that abuse in any form is intolerable and will not be tolerated within any community. Educating ourselves and raising awareness about abuse should be a shared endeavor, transcending religious boundaries. By doing so, we can foster a culture of compassion, support, and vigilance, creating safer environments for everyone and nurturing a sense of responsibility for the welfare of our fellow human beings. Authentic witnessing plays a pivotal role in empowering survivors to heal, extending beyond the boundaries of the Catholic Church to embrace all communities affected by abuse. By truly listening and validating survivors' experiences, we create a safe and supportive environment that fosters trust and encourages them to share their stories. Through this empathetic approach, survivors find the strength to confront their trauma, knowing that they are heard and understood. The impact of authentic witnessing goes beyond words. It translates into action. By demanding accountability for criminal acts, providing unwavering support, and advocating for justice, we validate survivors' rights and create opportunities for healing and closure. This collective effort transcends religious affiliations, promoting a culture of compassion, understanding, and unity that benefits all survivors, regardless of their background. Embracing authentic witnessing as a community empowers survivors to feel less isolated and more empowered in their healing journey. It communicates that their pain is acknowledged and that they are not alone in their struggle. In this way, authentic witnessing becomes a transformative force within the Catholic Church and all communities, fostering a path toward healing, recovery, and a brighter future for survivors and society. There is a compelling argument that empowering abuse survivors can empower the witnesses to become more compassionate. When witnesses actively engage in supporting survivors and helping them heal, they undergo a transformative process themselves. Here are some key points to consider. Witnessing survivor stories and experiences allows witnesses to develop a more profound sense of empathy and understanding. By putting themselves in the survivor's shoes, witnesses gain insights into the immense pain and challenges faced by those who have endured abuse. This heightened empathy fosters a greater capacity for compassion towards others' struggles and hardships, not just limited to abuse survivors. Engaging with survivors on their healing journey fosters a connection based on shared vulnerability and resilience. Witnessing the strength and courage survivors display throughout their recovery can inspire witnesses to be more compassionate and supportive individuals in their interactions with others, recognizing the humanity and struggles that everyone faces. Empowering survivors often involves advocating for their rights, demanding justice, and working towards systemic change. As witnesses become active support agents, they develop a sense of responsibility and a passion for making the world a better place. This may lead them to extend their compassion and advocacy efforts to other causes, promoting social justice and equality. Witnesses play a crucial role in breaking the silence surrounding abuse by actively listening to survivors and creating a safe space for them to share their stories. This act of breaking silence can inspire witnesses to encourage open communication and compassion in their broader communities, fostering a culture where people feel heard, valued, and supported. Engaging with survivors' healing journeys can be emotionally challenging and transformative for witnesses. It requires self-reflection, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about the prevalence of abuse and society's role in perpetuating it. This process of personal growth can lead to a more compassionate and empathetic outlook on life. Acts of compassion and empowerment have a ripple effect in communities. Witnesses support survivors and promote healing, inspiring others to do the same. This creates a positive feedback loop where compassionate actions and support become contagious, making the community a more caring and understanding place. Empowering survivors of abuse can indeed empower witnesses to become more compassionate individuals. Witnesses undergo a profound transformation beyond their immediate interactions by actively engaging with survivors, offering empathy and support, and advocating for justice. This increased compassion can positively change how witnesses engage with others, creating a more empathetic and supportive society. The church can implement transformative solutions for safeguarding and accountability, creating a safer and more healing community environment. It all starts with taking full responsibility for past failures and criminal behavior. By doing so, the church can begin a journey of redemption and renewal that resonates deeply with its members and the broader community. Transparency is key. The church must openly acknowledge its past mistakes and express genuine remorse. This will help restore faith and trust in the institution among survivors, their families, and the community. Knowing that the church proactively addresses its dark history can instill renewed faith and confidence. Empowering survivors is vital. The church should collaborate with specialized support services and counseling programs, offering survivors a supportive environment to heal and reclaim their lives. The church can make a real difference by creating a trusted space where survivors feel heard, validated, and empowered. Preventing future abuse is a top priority. Instead of just reporting incidents, the church needs to prioritize prevention. Robust training programs and transparent policies on appropriate behavior will instill greater confidence in the community. Members will feel reassured knowing that their spiritual sanctuary actively works to protect them and their loved ones. Impartial oversight is crucial for accountability. The current independent oversight committees lack transparency and trust. Establishing independent bodies will ensure impartial investigations and fair resolutions, reinforcing the belief in a just and transparent process with consequences for criminal behavior within the church. Regular reviews and improvements to safeguarding policies are essential. By continuously learning, growing, and implementing new procedures, the church shows its commitment to preventing future abuses. Past wrongs will not be forgotten or prevented. By acknowledging its moral failures, the church fosters a sense of collective responsibility and unity within its community. This acknowledgement shapes a community that acts with compassion, respect, and accountability, bringing healing and justice to survivors and taking greater responsibility for the future. Through genuine efforts to address past wrongs, the Catholic Church inspires faith in faith itself. Members recognize that their belief system's core teachings are rooted in love, compassion, and justice, and they see these principles exemplified in the Church's actions. This transformative journey provides hope and inspiration for other institutions and communities. The Church's example fosters a broader culture of accountability and healing. Survivors may find a new or renewed sense of belonging and acceptance within the faith, despite past hurts. The Church's acknowledgement of their pain and commitment to change helps rebuild a bridge of understanding and compassion. So before I end, I'll leave you with this. A journey of redemption, once steeped in betray, now takes a new course with hope's guiding ray. By seeking forgiveness, taking responsibility too, with transparency and commitment, their actions are true. In this presentation, Safeguarding's embrace, not just confronting darkness, but creating a safe place. Healing for victims, survivors, and all who believe. Together they walk with a shared purpose to achieve. With strength in their hearts, the Church stands tall, facing the past, answering the call. In the realm of faith, a tale is retold of redemption's path where hearts find gold. Shun the works of darkness, let truth break free. Justice prevails, compassion's decree. Ephesians' wisdom lights the way to heal the wounds and greet a new day. The Lord has heard your prayers and plea. With love I'll mend, you shall be free. From 2 Kings, a promise divine, boundless love, the heart shall entwine. Hand in hand, a journey unfolds. Through pain and hurt, they'll break the molds. With open hearts, they'll find the way to brighter skies from the darkest day. United they stand, embracing all, healing the wounds, answering the call. Redemption's grace, their guiding creed. In love and faith, they'll all be freed. Thank you very much for allowing me to give this presentation today.
Letitia, thank you so much for that. I am amazed with how wonderful of a presentation that was, full of so much useful information that needs to be translated, because, you know, we talk about being trauma informed and victim centered, but not within the case of the Church. So it's a really great perspective to hear from you. Thank you so much. And we do have a couple questions. The first one is more of a statement. It says, accountability equals penitentiary. Meaningful change must include prosecution in the face of such systemic exploitation. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. If you want to speak a little bit about that statement.
Well, in fact, yes. When I know the journey for my family, each step of the way to getting to that justice point was a point of healing. And so we see that, people go to jail for stealing, people go to jail for rape outside of the church, people go to jail for, harming someone else by taking things from them or destroying their property. But when it happens within the Catholic Church, no one does anything. So the victims have no validation that they've been harmed. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult. So we need to change that culture where these people who are harming others, they do need to face justice as well. Mm-hmm. It means something for the victims and the communities.
Definitely. I completely agree with that. And that point about validation is so important, because when the perpetrator is someone that's so well respected within the community, it can be hard to find others that may believe your claims. So that was a really great response. And the same person that commented that posted another question that says, thank you for your patience, intelligent, and eloquent response to such a vile issue. I'm quick to jump to an anger as response, but I guess that doesn't help. How did you first find the strength to be reasonable and not angry?
I was angry for a while. And to be honest, we all need to be angry, but it has to be a justified anger. And I had to work to that point to get to the justified anger to move me to fight the battle in a way that people would listen. Because in the beginning, when you're so harmed, and so for victims, I think people need to understand the difference between somebody who's advocating and the victim or the survivor, because it's very hard to move from just the bitter angerness to the anger that propels you to move forward. Because when there's no justice, no validation, you kind of want to stay in that anger where it's just bitterness. And I totally get that. I totally understand that. But moving, it's all literally by the grace of God, and realizing that there were so many victims that I was able to move this to this point as well. Because it's very difficult when you see so many people suffering and you want to take on their suffering as well. And I realized at some point that if I just stay bitter and angry in my own home and in my own circle of friends, I'm not going to be able to advocate for victims in a way that others will understand or even want to engage. So I was able to move to that point. But there needs to be a justified anger.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think that anger provides you with a little bit of that fuel to be able to get to that point of being able to advocate. So I commend you for what you do, because it's truly very much needed and so important. Another question. Great job. I appreciate the mission. How is the organization getting prepared to break the silence and breaking ILOS? I'm not sure if that was a typo. How can we, the community, might be able to support your mission?
We've kind of just been, chugging along, figuring out what's the best way to help others. And I realized that we had a website that we were totally funding all on our own. And, we are a large family and we have one income coming into our home. So that we didn't have a lot of extra money to put into our organization. And so we were basically just doing what we could and doing word of mouth. And we had people who were believed and were giving us small donations, which helped to get our, some things out and some printed materials. And then a few months ago, someone came in and said, no, we're going to help you out with a brand new website. We believe that is vital. They had heard that I was talking to victims, not only in Louisiana, but across the country. And they had found me through our website. So donations will help us to be able to keep our website running so that people can find us. Am I answering the question? I think I'm answering that question. We also being out in the community.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some new things going on. We have a good plan. We just got a new board in place so that we can be out in the community. So people will start seeing tent makers. You should start seeing it around the state, actually. And we should have, good new printed materials, but it really will all come from people helping with donations to our organization to be able to do that. I have been invited to other panels to speak. And so, yeah, it's actually spreading a lot more than it used to.
Yeah, and that's so important. And I feel as though this is an issue that has come to light severely within the last decade. I don't know if you saw, I'm not big on social media. So on Twitter, there was, I cannot remember the artist's name. She performed on Saturday Night Live back in the 90s, and she ripped the face of the Pope, and it was in response to clergy sex abuse. And people brought that video back up and they were like, I cannot believe we shamed this woman for for the people that she was standing for, because now it's all coming to light. So it's so amazing to hear all the power your organization is getting and the fuel that you guys are getting to ramp up to bigger things. That's so amazing to see, because especially in a state where there's so much the church is so involved in people's lives and within the community, it's something that's really needed to be brought to light and to have those folks' voices heard. So thank you. That's really awesome to hear. And then we have another question. How come nobody who allows this to happen knows this happened and covers it all up has ever been prosecuted? So I think it says, like, people that know it's happening, how are they not prosecuted?
We have to, and this is going to be a hard pill to swallow, but we have to look at government officials, district attorneys, people involved with government. If we have a district attorney who refuses to prosecute, no one's going to jail. And we just today, yesterday we learned of some prominent people in New Orleans. It's in the news. If you Google it, you'll find it. But there were some very prominent Catholics who were trying to pay off a victim so that they would not keep this in the news. And then this morning, it was just before this presentation, there was another release of information about Archbishop in the Archdiocese of New Orleans, where he was not even, they were covering it up as well. So there's such a problem with cover up. And, you know, I've been accused of trying to destroy the Catholic Church. But if you just look at it, I'm not the one doing the criminal activity. So I'm not destroying the Catholic Church. They're doing it all by themselves. And so I always tell people, I'm not anti-Catholic, I'm anti-criminal behavior. And you need to have children protected. And, you know, back in the 80s, when all this was kind of breaking and happening, and people were not paying attention to it, if it had been paid attention to back then, my son may not have had to go through this. It may not be my family. So I don't want my grandchildren, who may or may not even still be in the Catholic Church. I have no clue. I don't know what family members are going to be in the church, but I don't want them to have to go through the same thing that our family went through because I didn't do anything.
And that's a really beautiful message to keep you empowered as well on this mission that you have. I think it's a really great, if you are feeling discouraged or whatever it may be, and it goes across the board for all of us within this field that are working with survivors and victims, is that we want to make sure we're bettering the future for the people that come after us. And that is really something that is beautiful. And again, I commend you so much for the work that you do. And we are coming to a close. That was, I believe, all the questions that were submitted. Others said, well said, and thank you. And again, Letitia, thank you so much for this presentation. I believe that you did a fabulous job, and you've really brought a lot of attention to a cause that needs to be talked about more regularly. So thank you so much for the work that you and your family do. We have another thank you that someone submitted as well. And as well, I'm going to post Letitia's website in the chat, so that way if anyone wants to check out services that they offer, look a little bit more into their organization, you can do so by viewing their website. And Letitia, if there's anything else that you wanted to close out with, you're more than welcome.
If anybody's interested in how they can help doing volunteer work, just let me know. And this is our old website, so our new one will be launching in a couple of weeks. So if anybody's interested, just let me know, contact me.
Yeah, and if anyone needs Letitia's contact information and you can't find it online, feel free to reach out to me, and I can also pass that along to you as well. And another thank you for your incredible work from one of our viewers. So again, all I can do is thank you so much for the work that you do and for being with us here today. I believe this was really eye-opening for many of us, so thank you so much. And to our viewers, we appreciate you so much for being here. Like I said, be on the lookout to see what our topic for next month is, and we'll see you all soon, guys. Thank you.